So I want to introduce Mark Boyle to you. So Mark is his tabloid kind of cartoon self is the moneyless man that, goes into the Guardian without a shirt on and gets totally ripped apart by the pundits in the comments section. Actually, I think he's a really brave man. He lived without money for 3 years, totally outside the financial system, having done his education as an economist. So he's a man of paradox. He then came back into the money system to set up a permaculture freeholding in Ireland, and this is, say the Gaelic.
On Choxir.
Yeah, okay.
It means the free house.
So he's setting up the free house. Some of you will know that he has just completed a building conversion on absolutely totally minimalist money called the Happy Pig, which is going to be one of the first free pubs in the world, but also a training centre where people can come and reskill and rest and recuperate and not pay money. But what we're here today for is to talk about the concept of drinking Molotov cocktails with Gandhi. Really what this book is exploring, the sort of systemic disease of money and how it's been, and the first speaker really nailed it, it's been redesigned under our noses. So money as a medium of exchange has been colonised by the machine, and we'll talk about this, and it's been repurposed, and it is not to our benefit.
And so from the experience of living without money, I guess, I started to learn as I went along. So I started off with a few kind of understandings, and the more I'd done it, the more I felt I was getting a clear picture of the whole thing. I learned, actually, one critical thing I learned was, as I said, my connection to the rest of life. So I lived beside a spring and a stream, which was where I got my water from. And I remember going down in the ground one day and just cupping up some water and drinking the water from my hands and realizing, where do I begin and where do I end? Why am I just a skin encapsulated ego here, this blob of flesh and bones? Because at the moment my mouth's open right now. I'm breathing in air. I am not just this body. I'm everything. I'm interconnected to every single thing. And my health and my well-being is dependent on the health and well-being of everything else. And so if somebody comes along and throws oil in that stream, I'm dead. That's my body is 60% water. It's most of me isn't even human. And so I realized that that my own personal health was dependent on the health of everything else. And the really critical thing for this for me was that when I realized I had to defend these things, because I would defend an attack on my own body, because that's what it comes down to. I feel like I'm getting attacked by big business, by the state, by the corporate world, because they're attacking the very fundamentals of my body. And we need to think of it like that. We need to think of it as an attack. We are life. We are everything. There is no separation. The separation is an illusion. I guess my perspective is that no matter how we create, it still disconnects us from what we consume. So if you think about all the things we consume normally in a day, right? Which of us has any connection with 99% of those things? We might get our veg from the local farmer, if such a possibility exists. But if you look at our light bulbs, look at our walls, look at all these different things, we're totally disconnected from them. And the problem with this is that the huge supply chains that we have are entirely destructive. A lot of really bad stuff. I studied marketing as part of my business degree, and we were literally told to keep the producer away from the consumer. That's your marketing goal. Keep them as far apart as possible, because you do not want to see what goes on in between. You just don't want to see it. If who of us, when we go to the supermarket to buy some food, do we think about the oil, how the oil is produced along the way? Do we consider that? Do we think of the devastation that causes? Because we're totally separate from it. And the tool that allows us to be so disconnected from that is money in any form. I'm really supportive of local currencies and all that, but a local currency can only ever be as local as the economy that it represents. And I said if we could actually, like, if we could change the way money is created, that would be a massive step towards a much better world. But it still, for me, doesn't actually address the problem of disconnection to what we consume. The consequences of what we buy every day for anything other than a human being is massive, absolutely massive. We're wiping out life on Earth. You know, we're anything between 10,000 and 100,000 species a year are being wiped out, and we don't even know we're doing it because we're completely separate from it. So I see that was one of my kind of big realizations coming from the kind of business and economics world that I've been in. I kind of just got lucky. I got a job in organic food, where I got in touch with all these kind of weird and wacky people, you know, like kind of food growers and beekeepers and that kind of stuff. And I actually started learning about the real economy, you know, like about, we think of even in our circles, we use the word economy to mean like finance. We confuse the words economy and finance. They're not the same thing. Like we have to separate those words. But economics is about how we meet our needs. It's absolutely nothing to do with finance. And so that just got me really thinking, like what have I been doing with my education, with my economics education? It's like I should have been out, you know, with the permaculturists and the food growers and all that stuff, because that's the real economy. So that was the kind of like the real route into to living without money, I guess, for me, was just that realization, like we have to start getting connected to what we consume. And for me, so then I give up money initially for it was like a 1-year experiment. I didn't know if it'd last a week or last, you know, a day, but it got a lot of publicity at the time, which meant I couldn't really give up. And just I wanted to see what it felt like as a human being to have to connect with everything you consumed, what that actually meant, you know. Because that's really where it's at. You know, if we want to live really gentle lives that are in harmony with the rest of life and not exploiting it, then we need to connect with everything we consume. And there's really hard questions involved in this, which we don't want to ask. You know, we're afraid to ask them. Like we sometimes in these circles we can go around in bubbles, thinking, you know, we're all going in the right path and so on. But like, go home and switch on your light this evening. Where's the light bulb be made? You know, how do you make a light bulb? You know, how do you make anything that's in your house? Your toaster. Can anybody make a toaster? Does anybody know where the copper comes from in the electrical wire or the rubber around that? You know, where are all these things made? Can we continue doing them? That's the big question. Can we continue making these things? And what are the consequences of it if we are? Are we prepared to wipe out life on Earth because we don't want to ask difficult questions? But I guess the kind of big thing really was that cause I was very, very influenced by, as Molly knows, by Gandhi originally, and the whole idea of being the change you want to see in the world. And I think that's a really crucial thing that we all need to kind of do and be. Like what changes you want to see and how do you be it. But the other thing is that whilst I was living, being the change that, you know, I thought I wanted to see in the world, I was looking out and species are still going extinct, you know. We're still fracking, we're still bottom trawling, we're still sweatshopping, we're still factory farming. And me living in a field, you know, doing my thing, may have had impact, may not, I don't know. The stuff is still happening. Do we just forget about that, or do we tackle that as something that's really, really important to us? And so I guess I became really politicized in the whole process. And I got to the point where I felt that activism wasn't working anymore. It hasn't been working for a long time. You know, democracies are meant to hold power to account, but democracy is fundamentally flawed today. You know, the narratives are controlled by the media and by big business, and so we have spin doctors. The fact that there's actually a job called a spin doctor means that democracy can't work. You know, just think about it. There's somebody out there who's taking the truth and spinning it to us, so that we go along with what their agenda is. Like that, like the fact that Alistair Campbell calls himself a spin doctor openly, I just find absurd that we just accepted that. And so activism should come in when democracy fails. That's the next step to hold power to account. And activism just isn't working. Like every situation we're facing in the world, like this is a much different talk than the rest of the talks, because everybody's saying all the positive stuff and like we can do this kind of stuff, and I totally support that. That's what we should be leaving here with. but it's also important to remember that the things that aren't working, because otherwise we're just clapping ourselves in the back and feeling good about ourselves. And a lot of things aren't working. You know, we are literally wiping out life on Earth, and we're one of the species on the endangered species list. You know? It's not just a bunch of other species. Once they go, and enough of them go, we're somewhere down the list. I don't exactly know where. Probably sometime just shortly after the bees. And so...
Can I ask you, in your book, you write about becoming the political wolf, you know, about this concept of rewilding politics. What do you mean? Can you explain that concept of us becoming wolves?
Yeah, it's a really, because I don't know, you guys probably know George Monbiot's feral, yeah? And the whole idea in Yellowstone National Park, where they reintroduced the wolf, and suddenly life started flourishing again, you know, in ways that people couldn't have imagined originally. And I thought about this, and I thought about like, if you're asking who's the top predator, it's like it's not like in this room here there are a lot of different types of character. Like what activism does today is say the character who's the wolf, he's bad, he needs to leave, and there's a lot of in-house fighting about like my way is right, your way is wrong, all this kind of stuff. Activism movement is just destroyed by it most of the time. We spend most of our energy arguing amongst ourselves, not respecting each other's calling. And the failure there is the failure to recognise we all have a different character. You know, I'm not a spiritual elf in Tolkien's Legendarium. I'm probably a mixture of a hobbit and somebody from Rohan. That's a kind of a weird mix. But you know, what I'm really talking about is starting to reunite as activists of all sorts. Like there is no one right or wrong way to be active.
You're saying, really, don't be afraid. If any of you out there are political wolves, you know, stand up, because we need you in our ecosystem. You know, we need that power to overcome the desperately destructive and terrible machine that has been birthed as part of our culture that we are brainwashed to accept and think is okay. That's
exactly, yeah. And also as well that like if you're not the wolf and you're somebody who wants to plant seeds, then respect the person who's the wolf, because it's not in his nature to plant seeds. What I see permaculture as being and what it does incredibly well is plant seeds. So if you think of the ground, it's going around planting these beautiful little seeds every day. But what's happening at the moment is that these seeds can't germinate fully because there's big, huge dead trees that need to be taken out, you know, to let the light in so these new seeds can grow. And it takes both to do that. You need people who are willing to do the kind of reformist actions of planting seeds and coming up with new solutions, which is what like probably 90% of the speakers here today talk about. My job here is a different type of character, is to say we also need the people who can take out the dead trees that are actually blocking out the light and let a little bit, you know, a little bit in. Yeah. There's lots of examples. Like in the book, I go through like historically, what has worked and what hasn't worked, even in my own country, Ireland. You know, there's many examples. I do think there needs to be honesty around how local it can be. But also, I couldn't disagree more with Buckminster Fuller's quote. To be honest, like he was an inventor. What he was saying, you know, about like create something new to replace the old, that works in the realm of products. It doesn't work in the realm of politics. Lots of people are inventing new ways or have invented many ways of social structure. But it's not just as simple as inventing and we all move there. There are some entrenched structures that we call the establishment that are an obstacle. And it's an obstacle for a permaculture movement too. You know, like permaculture, like I'm a permaculturist. It's the most incredible solution I've ever experienced. You know, I couldn't, you know, this is where it's at for me. But I also recognize the fact that there's huge obstacles to permaculture taking off. You know, it's like access to land being a massive one, you know, wealth distribution, you know, the concept of private property. Like we need deep, radical political change. And voting every 5 years for Tory or Labour is just not going to do it. So we have to be honest about that.